on this week's FAS TV. We're back at Easter Howgate to hear how the team's proactive approach to herd health planning, combined with a rigorous testing regime for Johne's disease, has improved the health and productivity of the Easter Howgate herd. We also hear from SRUC Veterinary Services Manager Helen Carty, who's part of the Scottish Johne's disease working group, on the benefits of joining a health scheme, as well as discussing tackling Johne's disease.
I've been with SRUC for an awful long time, I'm not going to tell you how long, but I just moved across to the farm in 2019, just as COVID broke out, which meant we had a lot of time to look at what was historically the sort of performance of the herds, especially the beef cow herd, because at that time we're starting to look at how do we centralise it and what we try and do. And for various reasons there was a legacy of Johne's here, and that was probably the biggest challenge, and because we hadn't really got a right grip of what the Johne situation was. Again, for me it's really important that the cattle that we produce, we're using for feeding trials and stuff, but we need to have them as standardised as we can, but that includes their health statuses. So we don't have animals breaking doing a trial for a known health parameter, whether it's pneumonia or whatever it is. I'm a great believer in sort of bringing a team together and setting a target, and done this previously, but we, in association with our vets, we started looking at, again, what is a reasonable expectation of amount of calves born, you can all sorts of things, and in discussion with the staff, and I mean I would say to anybody, the vet and your staff are the two most important folk in doing this. You need to sit down and actually be realistic as to why things are happening, and you can achieve big changes in that. And some of the changes we've achieved here are very small things, but they're driven by having the sort of data in front of you. And by data, I'm no data geek, I mean it's just actually understanding what is happening and having a no-fault discussion. So you can, at the end of calving, we'll sit down and we'll go through every single calf that was lost, every coot was touched, why was it touched, how do we avoid doing that again. I have a fascination in this shed. There's all the cows calve in this shed, so we've thickened to 300 cows calving in a very short time in the springtime. We only have 6 calving pens. That's the first pens I look in, and if I find something in the calving pen, ding, why is it there? Why is it there? Because that's what slows our the staff time down. If you've got a calf with navel ill or cripple or broken leg, how do you stop that? And that is the secret of health planning, to be honest. So the health status for us, I mean, it was no secret. We lost 30 cows one year in the Buckwheat Herd health test in November, and it's like, how on earth are we going to progress this? I mean, the number of cows we have, that was a ridiculous number. So with the vets, we start setting a really strict protocol around about Johne's. I wouldn't say we've got Johne's cracked, but we've got ourselves from a status 4 up to status 2, and if fingers crossed and clear test this year, we should be a status 1, which in 5-6 years has been a very, very rigorous programme we've done. Religious culling out of cow families, but we go up the chain as well as down, and that has helped massively. I mean, I should have said that the herd itself is self-sustaining. The only thing we buy in are bulls, and the bulls are rigorously tested before they're anywhere near the cows, as it were. You have to set objectives that are possible. So we calve really, really quickly in the spring. So the first 100 calves I get treated as little calves for pneumonia on the basis we mightn't get them out of the weather crap, which means we can hold them in, and it might be the calf 102 and 103 gets kicked out before the first calves born, because we know they're protected for pneumonia. So it's just being organised and just having a plan for everything. That's really fits really important here. Calving's just finished, and we have to think about how we've achieved what we've managed to achieve, and you two have had the work at it. I think probably need to start with things like, I don't know, the Neospora. Was there any kind of blind calves or anything come through this year?
Nothing confirmed blood test wise or anything, but we had a couple of blind calves come through that were related to one that got sepsis from just an infection that it picked up, and then we had another 2 that were suspecting were blind, but one of them we put down, and it turned out it had a tumour in its brain that it had been born with since birth, and then the other one it's under treatment from the vets at the moment, but it looks like it's coming right, and it doesn't look like it's blind as of just now.
So where are we going with Johne's now then? What stage have we got until?
So currently we're sat at R2 for our Johne's. We're We've just come up from an R3 just in our FAS test there in November. We've been blood testing and dung sampling just to get a good all-round result and to make sure we're picking up anything that could be or might be.
So other heifers that we've got selected and stuff have all been tested
They've all
for
passed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've all passed. Like.
They've all been done, passed. So it's, and then something like we spoke about a couple of weeks ago was we're going to implement a secondary blood test that we're going to do on the whole spring herd just before their actual AI day starts, just as a wee backup and a security thing to try and extra early pick up anything if it does come back positive there. So it'll kind of be a one-off thing that we're looking at doing out with.
And that'll be run as a
scheme.
private test.
That'll be run as a private test, so it's out with the PCHS scheme. It's still going to be run through the SRUC labs and everything like that, but it won't be our official test because our official test is back in November.
Aye, so I mean, just to remind myself here is that the official test is November, but we've implemented additional testing.
Yes.
Which was the dung sampling.
Dung sampling in February of the spring herd. We'll dung sample the autumn herd 3 weeks pre-calving. But what I meant is we managed to pick up and eliminate extra cows quicker that would have went under the radar from the yearly testing through the scheme.
So I suppose, because if you think about it, what Johne's does is it spreads in the muck, basically. So the sooner we can get the beast out of that shed, the less they're spreading in the shed. And if we go back far enough, that's what had happened, is that there was a big trial 8, 9, 10 years ago that brought a lot of cattle onto the site. There's a lot of contaminated muck, which then bled into the main herd. My idea was, because as I say, I have no patience for this, is that get them out of that shed as quickly as we can, to be fair. And I mean, what we're doing is if we identify animals that are positive, we have a separate steading that they go to, so that it's separate feed-in, separate calve-in, and what we do with them is they're culled. I mean, the beast will rear the calf and go, but she's kept completely separate, as it were, because, as I said, no patience to wait forever. We're faced with quite a big challenge here, and I think we've achieved it. Anything else come up in the sort of calving and stuff health-wise that we weren't prepared for or we'd never thought about?
Not that we weren't prepared for. We've been BVD testing all our calves with tag samples since last year. Last year we implemented that. Last year we had a bit of bother with BVD, but now we've caught up to that. All our boundaries are double fenced. There's absolutely no contact. We're a closed herd. And this year we BVD tagged, sampled them all again, and everything's come back clear. We had one inconclusive, but it's since come back clear, and we've had a couple of insufficients that have also come back clear, so we're completely clear on that front as well.
And we're happy that BVD breakdown we had, or that positive, was a failure of the double fence, basically.
Yeah.
That seems our most logical thought process of where it comes, because we haven't bought anything in that's ever mixed with the herd out with a stock pool and things like that. Nothing else has came in that's been bought in that's joined our breeding herd or mixed with the breeding herd as such.
So we probably just need to double check on our boundary fences and stuff and just keep that as an annual job before we start turning everybody out.
So here, in terms of our cow herd here, we're actually quite a clean herd, as in terms of we don't have much a worm burden problem, we don't have much a fluke problem. But what we do is every calf, when we wean them for the first winter, they'll get a pour on for worms, because we've taken fecal egg counts in the past and found that there's a very slight worm egg factor there. So they'll get a pour on for that. All the bullocks will stay in for the rest of their life, so they never get any other treatment after that. Heifers, if they're going outside as a bulling heifer, once she comes back inside, if she's confirmed in calf, she'll get another wormer pour on, and that is all we give our cows for anything for worms here. We continually check heifers outside at grass for dung sampling them, and we check first calvers as well when they're outside at grass again, just to make sure that our programme's actually working and we're staying on top of any build-up of worms or anything. And in the back end, usually about January time, we dung sample all the cows when they're inside for fluke, usually looking for adult fluke at this point. We've never ever found that we've had a breakdown in the herd from fluke from all the years that I've been here.
So typically surrounding calving as well, we try and coincide it with the fluke testing, as we metabolic profile some of the cows. We do that purely out of our own interest, really. The cows have been inside for a while, they're on their pre-calving ration, they're ready to go, so we draw bloods for them in January, and then we draw them a couple of weeks later again in February, just to make sure that our proteins are where we need them to be, they're all getting the mineral levels that they need, and just to make sure that everything's right. They've always come back quite well. We've done quite well in keeping on top of their what the cows are needing, but just to keep the cows right and to keep an AI programme looking clean. Going out, like just as the cows are getting loaded onto the float to go out to the field, they're getting a mineral bolus. We implemented that last year, we started doing that. So we're getting, the heifers get a separate bolus that's missing copper from it. Yeah. And then all the adult cattle get a bolus that's got your selenium, your iodine, your copper, your mag. They get a separate mag bolus actually. So they're getting bolus for all of that just to give them, they last 6 weeks, a month. And it just gives them that lasting effect just when they head out, just to keep them right, keep them fit.
Just on that, I mean, the nutrition in the winter, this minerals is really, really important. It's probably something we've changed in the last 2 or 3 years, and we've actually gone to this dedicated pre-calving mineral. And it's probably quite a high-spec mineral. It's probably not the cheapest mineral out there, but I think it gives a bit of benefit in terms of calf vigor and stuff, because we want calves that are going to come out themselves, get up and get soaked kind of style. Yeah. And you want cows that've got kind of decent quality colostrum, and I suppose we've been testing bits of colostrum again to make sure the colostrum quality is what we expect it to be like.
Like touching base on when you talk about the mineral that we're now getting as a spec, it's a proper prescription mineral that we're getting made up, that we've tested all our silage as well, so we're getting the mineral to actually fit what our silage is coming back with on the mineral analysis. What we've found, like, this is the first year we've done it, and when we compare some of the results back to 2, 3, 4 years ago, probably more 3 or 4 years ago now, compared to the general off-the-shelf pre-calving mineral we were using, just a lot of the wee, very snaggy points that we're finding we didn't have this year. And we didn't have it in the autumn herd as well when we brought them in and checked them. So we're hoping that the mineral's a wee bit dearer, but if it's going to fix just a handful of small issues on the other end at calving time, that is more than going to pay for itself. In terms of overall health in the herd, I'd say the herd is actually quite a healthy herd. We don't have a big issue with pneumonia. We don't have any, touch wood, any issue with skewers or anything. Like, throughout the whole of calving time, we didn't treat one calf for a skewer, and in the back end when we wean, just a lot of the changes that we've implemented in the herd, and whether or not it's staggered weaning them over a longer period of time, keeping the calves not tight, making sure they've got fresh water, things like that. What it meant is we've been able to really, really hit down on their pneumonia, which in the long run saves us money on antibiotics, but it stops us building an antibiotic resistance in the herd as well. But it gives these calves the best possible chance to start ramping on their daily live weight gains right from the very start. Yeah, so like in terms of our calving, we've got to the point we don't have a huge amount of issues anymore. But one of the things we've noticed this year is it was our best year of calving. Like our list of problems were the lowest that we've ever had.
So this year we calved down 225 cows. We just had our post-calving meeting. I had counted it up, and out of those 225 cows that calved, we assisted 20 cows, 2 of which were Caesars. They were both out of heifers with just bigger calves, so you're always going to get them. That's not anything you can really control. 4 of them were rope assists, so we're just needing a wee hand here and there, and the rest of them were jacks. None of them were big issues, none of them were massive, oh gods, like this is huge. It was just wee bits and pieces, maybe a few lazy cows here and there, but it went really, really well. I
think quite a lot of the cows as well is the fact we are calving so many cows so quickly, so tightly. It's very easy for us to have 5, 6, 7 cows all calving in a pen at once. So a lot of the ones, when we look back over our figures, I think there was at least 4 or 5 cows that we wrote down that we had to assist that were purely just because they weren't getting on with it. And the only reason they would have calved, it was just the fact they'd been disturbed by another cow calving or another 2 cows or something. And once a cow gets herself worked up, a lot of the times it's just easier to get her out of that pen, get the calf out, get her settled down. And whether or not you put her back in that pen or you have to put her somewhere else, or even if it's just in a different pen with other cows, just so she's not mixing with them. But that's a fallout of our own setup, because we're calving so many cows so tightly in so many pens. So as Beth said, the actual calves that we've actually had to assist was very low in terms of hard calvings that actually needed assistance.
But the calves themselves, how vital are they? Are they up and sucking quite quick, or you had to suck a lot of calves in?
The calves are bang on. The cows calve down, calves are clicked off, they're clean, they're dry within half an hour, and within an hour calves are on their feet sucking. We've maybe given sucks to 3, 4 calves this year. They've had no bother at all, but that comes back to culling cows out with bad bags, etc. calves aren't struggling to get on big teats, calves are just getting on with it. These heifers' calves are really flying, like really, they're up and at it, no bother, no time at all.
I think, as far as the health scheme is concerned, we're long-term members of the PCHS. I think what we need, you can, whatever health scheme folk want to use, you need the sort of discipline of a health scheme behind it. We've had other opportunities as well now, have we not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, with us improving our Johne status, we're clearing up these neospora, well, not issues, we've not had issues with it, but we're becoming that cleaner herd. So with our pedigree ling herd that we're running, we've taken the opportunity and we've kept some bulls intact. So the goal, well, we sold our first bull last February, or this February even. He sold at Stirling, and these 3 boys that have been floating about behind us, they're bound for Stirling next year hopefully. But it's just given us that opportunity to promote what we can and what we're producing. It lets us sell more cattle live, it lets us sell them for breeding. So we're keeping these bulls intact to sell as bulls, and we're keeping, or the goal is anyway, to get our extra ling heifers, some of the best of our ling heifers, to get them through the breeding sale.
Okay, I mean, in terms of health planning here, I suppose we have to give credit to Tim Garrity, who used to work in the vets with us here in SRUC. Tim came to me wanting to set herd health targets, and I thought, oh, here we go. More health targets, metrics, all the rest of it. What excitement is there in that? If we're honest, Tim and I had a meeting, we set some targets that we thought were achievable for the herd. I was still quite sceptical at that point. At the time, we put those targets to Bruce and the other cattlemen that we had at the time. They set targets that were even more harder than the ones me and Tim had set, and actually they went on and beat them. And that kind of sparked something in me that you can actually setting targets actually maybe as a way to make gains here. And I think if somebody wants to start this, you need to decide what it is you want.
Cattle health schemes are a really useful framework for farmers to work with their vets to understand the disease status on their farm and determine how best to understand whether diseases are present, if they are present, what to do about them, and if they're not present, how to keep them out. The Premium Cattle Health Scheme is the largest provider of cattle health schemes in the UK, and all cattle health schemes are regulated by CHECS, so that's the Cattle Health Certification Standards. They're the regulatory body, so together with representatives from the health schemes, they take care of the technical documents, so review and update the rules of the health scheme, and they license the laboratories that provide health schemes. But health schemes is really a three-way relationship between the laboratory doing the testing, who give tailored advice for farmers and their vets about how to approach disease, the farmer themselves and the veterinary practitioner. So the vet is the best placed, the private vet is the best placed representative to understand what's going on in your farm and advise, working with you, what goals you want to take forward and what you want to achieve. So cattle health schemes are suitable for all types of cattle farms, whether it's a small pedigree farm or a larger commercial unit. It allows the framework for testing for diseases, so there are single agent diseases that are really important to cattle health and production. So BVD, IBR, lepto, Johne's and neospora. If you have these diseases present in your herd, it's really important that you know that, so that you can work out with your vet whether you should be trying to eradicate these diseases or whether you should be vaccinating and monitoring it instead. If these diseases are not present in your herd, then the CHECS rules have a framework for biosecurity rules about added animals, about how to protect your herd. You may want to progress so that you can have certification for these diseases, so that if you're selling stock, that would increase the value of your stock and give assurance to buyers that your animals are of a low disease status. But it really fits in for anybody, and you can sign up for one disease or all of the diseases, and you can progress at your own rate, and so the health schemes can really be tailored to support you and your farm. Health planning is a really useful time to discuss infectious diseases with your vet. Life is really busy with lots of competing priorities, and unless we set time aside to discuss the health aims of your herd, it will get lost. So really take the opportunity to sit down with your vet and consider what your priorities are, what your goals are. What does success look like for you? What would a good year be? You can then work with your vet to understand what risks there might be to stop you from achieving these goals. And if you can identify what those risks are, you can mitigate against them. And infectious disease fits perfectly into that. If your goal is to ensure that you get good growth rates in your calf crop, an incursion of BVD into your farm could really impact on that. BVD will suppress the immune system, will cause increased other diseases such as pneumonia and scour, and could really have a detrimental effect on growth rates, for example. If you can understand what the risks of introducing BVD into your herd and perhaps choose to vaccinate or ensure that you have adequate biosecurity in place, then you can close that risk off. If you have BVD in your herd currently, many Scottish herds already know the status of their herd, but if you do have BVD, then the checks framework allows you to systematically test and make sure you remove any infected animals. The infectious diseases covered by the cattle health scheme can have significant impact on productivity of a herd. So Johne's disease, for example, we know that animals clinically affected by Johne's disease lose weight, they can scour, and it can be so severe that they end up dying or having to be culled. But we know that before infected cows reach that severe stage, that their production will be less, their milk production will be less, therefore calves suckling from Johne's infected cows, we know that their growth rates will be poorer. So it's just an example of how these infectious diseases can impact on the health and the productivity of your herd. If your herd is currently free of IBR, but you introduce IBR into your herd, perhaps with added animals, that could really have a devastating impact on calf health, for example. IBR is a virus that can cause inflammation in the upper respiratory tract, so it can contribute to pneumonia, and we know that pneumonia can really impact on growth rates as well. So by understanding the risks of adding animals or understanding the current disease status, we can mitigate against those risks by putting in place testing protocols to check the status of added animals, or putting in vaccination protocols to protect animals from the risks of those added animals pose. Vaccination is not a barrier to joining the health schemes. So for BVD and IBR, we have vaccinated, monitored free schemes. So really the health schemes, PCHS, can be tailored to the specific needs of your own herd, and you can work with your vet to decide what the best approach would be. Infectious disease can have a real impact on fertility as well. So for example, BVD and IBR, if animals are infected with them for the first time, very often they will spike a fever. If cattle spike a fever, if a bull spikes a fever, then that would impact on sperm production. Therefore, the fertility of that bull could be knocked out for 10, 12 weeks. So you can imagine, if you don't know if you've got BVD or IBR in your herd, and you go and buy a pedigree bull that is free of these diseases, introduce him to your herd without vaccinating, without protecting him, then the knock-on impact for the fertility of your herd could be disastrous. He might not work, and that could really set back your calving period, your calving interval altogether. In addition, many of the infectious diseases covered by the scheme, BVD, IBR, lepto, neospora, they can cause high barren rates or early embryonic loss or abortions. So if you're seeing concerns about fertility, or indeed if your fertility is good and you want to protect it, then it's another reason to understand the infectious disease status in your herd and work towards protecting that status or improving that status if needs be. Many herds will know or will suspect that they've had cases of clinical Johne's disease in the past. So when animals are clinically affected with Johne's disease, cows will typically lose weight, lose condition perhaps rapidly, perhaps have a severe scour and waste away and die or require to be culled. These clinical cases, though, are just the tip of the iceberg. So we would say that Johne's disease was typical of an iceberg disease. And what I mean by that is, for all of the clinical cases that you see, there are likely to be a lot more animals that would test positive if we were to look for antibodies in their blood to Johne's disease. And then down from that, there is an even greater number of animals that are actually infected with the condition, but are not yet testing positive and not yet showing clinical signs. So we reckon for every clinical case of Johne's disease we see, there are likely to be a further 20 animals in the herd affected. So what can we do about Johne's disease? It's really important not just to watch for animals getting sick and removing them. If we can reduce the overall number of infected animals, then we can reduce the infection pressure on herds, and we can reduce the risk of spread of infection, particularly to calves. So Johne's disease is a bacteria that is shed particularly in faeces, and young calves are very much at risk of acquiring that infection in their first few months of life. So if you have a cow that is infected with Johne's disease, her fecal material will be infected with Johne's disease. Her udder, her milk can also have the Johne's disease organism. We need to do everything we can to ensure hygiene is optimal, and in busy calving pens that's a difficult thing to do, but ensure there's plenty of fresh, clean straw, that cows are kept as clean as possible, to reduce the amount of fecal material that those young calves get exposed to. In addition though, we can use the framework of checks and the framework of the Premium Cattle Health Scheme to help us identify animals that are likely to be infected, hopefully before they're shedding significantly. There's a system of regular testing to allow us to do that, and then advice on the back of that if you identify infected animals, it's best not to breed from their daughters, because their daughters in turn are very likely to be infected. So in order to control Johne's disease, we need to take two approaches, or three approaches really. We need to ensure that hygiene is critical, ensure the fecal contamination calves are exposed to is minimised. We need to have a testing programme in place to help us identify likely infected animals so that we can manage them and ideally remove them, so that we're minimising the risk to young stock on farm. And if we don't have a problem with Johne's disease, we need to think about how are we going to keep it out. And again, the PCHS has got a framework for testing of added animals. Ideally, we would only introduce animals from the lowest risk herds, so those would be herds that are classified as R1 or R1 star for Johne's disease, which means they've had 3 clear annual herd tests for Johne's disease. If that is not possible, introducing animals from other herds is a risk, but we can mitigate against that to a degree by doing testing of animals in quarantine before we allow them to join the herd. So there's a really well thought out programme to help you work with your vet to consider a risk and mitigate against it. Speak to your vet about the Premium Cattle Health Scheme and see how it could fit into your herd health plan. If you know your disease status of your herd, then work with your vet through the framework of the health scheme to keep infectious diseases out. If you do have infectious diseases present in your herd, like IBR or Johne's disease, that could be impacting the health and productivity of your herd, then use the Premium Cattle Health Scheme with your vet to minimise the risks those diseases pose, and to work to reduce the level of infection in your herd, perhaps with a view to getting certification in the future.